Hey y'all, how are you doing? I am great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. In this video, I wanted to have a really deep, thoughtful conversation about fat phobia. I have noticed on this channel and elsewhere, anytime we talk about challenging fat phobia in the slightest, people lose their shit. And I can't handle that. So I decided to bring on people who actually know what they're talking about, because frankly, most people don't. So hopefully we can have a really rigorous, interesting, compelling discussion about Black women in particular in the intersection of fat phobia. So thank you guys so much for joining me, Dr. Joy and Danny. I appreciate y'all so freaking much because it's getting tiring.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
All right, before we jump into it, would y'all both introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your work? Let's start with Dr. Joy.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Joy Cox. I consider myself a body advocate. I have a PhD in communication where my research focuses on matters of weight stigma and all its intersections. And so I focus primarily on how weight stigma impacts particularly fat Black women and femmes. I just wrote a book, Fat Girls and Black Bodies, that got released in September of this year on this topic. And I'm super excited to be here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danny. On Instagram, people call me I'm a Pound Cake. I was born and raised in Sanford, Florida, and that's where I reside. I'm a community organizer, and a lot of my work is centered around fat Black women and our liberation. And I'm so glad to be here with you today to talk a lot about it.
I wanted to start off, if we could, by talking about Lizzo, because Lizzo is a cultural figure who has become a lightning rod. And I'm sure that y'all have some thoughts about why anytime she does anything, there's so much discussion about it.
So I guess I can start. So I think there's a number of different reasons why whenever Lizzo does something, she seems to be talked about a lot. And I think one of those reasons deal with her size. The other reason deals with her race. And then, how she carries herself. And so Lizzo is not what society would typically think a fat Black woman should be. She's loud. She is, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I think she just lives out loud. She does what she wants, how she wants to do it. And when you have an identity or identities that have been stigmatized, I think that stereotypes hit you a lot harder. And so she is constantly being critiqued and looked at as a representation of a whole and judged on that matter by society or the standards that society puts in place for people who look like Lizzo. And they say how she should behave. And every time she, rebels against that, like everybody is on her like a hawk.
Yeah, I feel like people are always talking about what Black women are doing, right? Like we can't do nothing. If we do what everybody tell us to do, they're mad. If we do the opposite, they're mad. But I think a lot of times that the outrage about Lizzo is that she's defiant, right? Like her body is deemed as defiant. Blackness is seen as defiant, right? The way that she behaved is seen as defiant. But we're allowed to see it in every other place. Like Miley Cyrus can do the same thing that Lizzo is doing, and she makes a couple $1 million from it. And so also I love Meg, right? Meg can also twerk on the internet, but Lizzo can't do it because people see Lizzo as a mammy, right? Like as their mom or whatever, or I don't know, but it's just interesting to see how people are responding to her body in the public eye, because as much as I want to say it's just white people, I don't think it's just white people. It's our community too that is very uncomfortable with the way that Lizzo is living her life.
Yeah. Danny, you used the word mammy, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm so glad. I follow an activist named Sonia Renee Taylor on Instagram, and she made a little video because Lizzo started another uproar this week. And Sonia's video was called "Lizzo is not your fat phobia mammy." And it does feel like people are expecting a lot of her. Like people are putting a lot on the shoulders of this woman. Does it feel like it's unreasonable? Do you feel like she has positioned herself in this way, or are people just projecting all of that stuff onto her?
I'll let it
Joy,
go first.
Joy and I are like, should I mean, I think it's both. I don't think it's one or the other, right? Like, I do think people are expecting a lot from Lizzo, right? Like, and I think rightfully so. And I don't want to leave it right there. I think Lizzo has dibbled and dabbled in fat acceptance language, right? And like dibbled and dabbled in the fat acceptance movement. So people are trying to hold her accountable in the same way that Black people try to hold other, celebrity figures accountable, right? And so what they're trying to hold her accountable for is diet culture and the promotion of diets. I don't necessarily agree with people being uncomfortable with the possibility of Lizzo losing weight. That's her damn body, right? But like, I don't know if I could curse, but that's her body. And but I also think that like it is a lot to carry on your shoulders, but that's not Lizzo's fault, right? That like it's the fault of the industry. Why is it that we can have a Sukiana, a Meg, we can have a Sweetie, or however you say her name, you could have City Girls, right? You can have a bunch of, you can have Ari Lennox, you can have Beyonce. Like I can go on a list of genres, but you can only have one fat Black woman. Even though we got Chica, she's just not at the level, right? Many people don't know who that is, or Rhapsody, right? Or LaKayla 47. So Lizzo is by herself in the mainstream, and so she's everybody's example of how to not be fat phobic, because we don't share, well, not we, the industry and the media is not willing to share space so people can learn about fat Black bodies, or just let fat Black people be in the media and just live and exist.
Right. And I think that we can hold two realities simultaneously. And so I think that we can check one another and call out like, hey, don't put this all on her. But we can also hold the reality that she has stood for fat bodies and she has stood for fat acceptance. And as a fat Black woman being in this space, it means something when you deviate from that, right? Like we were supposed to be cool, right? Like I thought we was hanging, we was chilling, and now I see you do this thing, right? And as your friend or as somebody that's in communion with you, I'm gonna be like, hey, what is going on here, right? And then to kind of see her kind of double down and be like, fat girls should be able to do whatever the fuck they want with their bodies. To me, I think, that's how in a lot of ways diet culture becomes sinister, right? Because now that's being repackaged. That's something that's empowering, right? And if you are somebody who stands in that space of fat acceptance, like we're not empowering people to participate in diet culture. Like, sure enough, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do with your body, but we don't want to send people that type of message. And so I think it's possible to hold both realities simultaneously and say like all of this isn't on Lizzo, but at the same time also say like, hey, I thought that we had something here. I thought this is what you stood for, and like, can you explain as to why this is, why you're deviating away from this thing and now promoting something that is harmful ultimately for the community.
Yeah. So this is what's interesting. We see all kinds of celebrities kind of stepping into this kind of it's hard to reconcile because they are kind of dibbling and dabbling in social justice language, like liberation language, and they have a really maybe sincere relationship to it, but more casual relationship to it. And then they say things that are contradictory, and you're like, what, but you just did all of that and said all of that and used the terminology and all of that. So it does, for the consumer, it creates confusion.
Absolutely, like for sure. And I think that, for a lot of people, it's not, I think a lot of people are hung up on like the lose weight, not lose weight thing or whatever. And for a lot of people, like at least within the fat Black collective I'm part of, like that's not the issue. The issue is like what you're selling. The issue is the messages that you have been using that now have switched up and changed, right? Like people aren't as concerned as with your body getting smaller and larger. We know that bodies fluctuate over time. Nobody cares about that. But we do care about the means by which you are now promoting, saying that this is what you're doing to quote unquote be healthy. And part of that is because being in this community, we know that detoxes don't work. We know that that's part of diet culture. We know all of those things. So that's what we're bringing to the table. That's what we need to have, our understanding reconciled about, not the fact that she is smaller or larger than what she was 2 weeks ago.
And I think it's unfair to for people to silence fat activists about this conversation, saying she's not your mammy. Like, we know that. We don't want any fat Black woman to be anybody's mammy, right? But we know that detox don't work, as Dr. Cox just said, right? Like, we know that your liver and kidney does that on its own. And that's what the fat acceptance is all about. Like, tearing down these myths about the ways that we've been taught about diets in general, like the keto diet. It was created for seizures, right? And so people are using it to lose weight. And so we saw Lizzo promoting the keto diet. We would have thought the same exact thing. And also, Lizzo doing the body checks. It wasn't just about the detox, but while she was explaining the detox, she was turning around and like showing her body, right? And we always talk about how before and after pictures are problematic, because what are they saying? The larger version of you is the problem, and the smaller version of you achieved something beautiful, not just healthy but beautiful, because it's tied to beauty politics.
Yeah. So that is okay. So are y'all on TikTok? No. I'm too old to be on TikTok, but I'm all up on TikTok. Okay, anyways, so something that I noticed, so I did see that TikTok of Lizzo, but something that I noticed that is so pervasive on TikTok is people, and I wanted to make a TikTok about this, how you can lose weight or do a cleanse or whatever, but you don't have to become a fitness influencer or a cleanse influencer. We don't have to see the before and after pictures. We don't have to see you sweating and all of that and crying because you're fat and all. Like, I don't. But there is something about these platforms that incentivizes people to perform it in that way. Like, what is it about the draw of the before and after pictures, like the draw of like the progress TikToks or the progress videos?
So, I think all of that is attached to diet culture, right? Like, diet culture isn't just about the food that you eat. And it's not just about you being physically active. Diet culture literally sells the lie that in a smaller body, you can have success, period. That's across all contexts of your life, right? And so if you're smaller, you get you get the person you want, you get the job you want, you make a lot of money. Like, diet culture sells you all of those things. And so a lot of people have attached those values to watching people get smaller, right? And so it's almost watching that transformation happen before your eyes and seeing people get closer to what they quote unquote deem successful. And so I think that, diet culture is all of that, right? Like, it's the whole lifestyle. Watching, somebody go from something, it's like rags to riches. Like, I don't know anybody else. Like, I watch a lot of House Hunters. Like, that is, that's my show, right? And I get joy out of seeing people pick the house in the end. So for that little 30 seconds, when they say we decided to go with house number 3, that little 30 seconds, I will watch 28 and a half minutes long of the progress. And I feel like it's the same thing when it comes to people watching these progress videos. You will watch people go from step to step, picture to picture, because you're waiting for success. And if they can be smaller in the end, it's like, yes, this is what I want. You're attached to that. You resonate with that because you also intake whatever you believe diet culture is selling. And it's always good to see other people succeed, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because it's all a dream, right? It's not real. Over half of the people who invest in weight loss, within 2 years, they gain 80% of the weight back. So like, we have to
95%.
Oh, 95%.
95%
Okay.
of diets fail. Yeah.
Thank you. 95%. Thank you, Joy Cox. 95% of the diets fail. So like, is this investment sustainable? Like, that's a question that we have to keep asking ourselves, right? Like, also it's interesting that we celebrate like weight loss. Like, no one celebrates me for gaining weight at all, right? Like, actually my treatment does start to change. People do start to treat me different. I am treated differently than I was at a size 12. Now that I'm at a size 20, people treat me different. And I think sometimes people's investment in seeing the progress is about like, now I can treat you as a different type of human being.
Ooh, that's spicy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so a question I have then is it even possible to talk about cleanses? Talk about, because I think she described it as, or did she describe it as a detox or a cleanse? I can't remember. But anyways, a conversation that I've been seeing is, what's wrong with the cleanse? Like, sometimes you just need a cleanse. Sometimes you just need a detox. Is it possible to separate that stuff from diet culture?
I say no, right? Lizzo, and I don't want to be like, oh, I'm dragging Lizzo because I'm a Lizzo stan. I didn't get to say this first. So I believe in behaving kind of like the Beehive when it comes to Lizzo. I do, because I'm like, protect Lizzo. But I do want to tell the truth, right? Like, Lizzo also was doing some marketing in there, right? Like, she was tagging the business. And then when you go to the business page, it's like all of these, everything that we hate about diet culture is attached to the business. And even though it's like a cleanse or a detox, like I said before, like, that myth has been debunked. Like, your liver and kidney is doing it itself. And I mean, if you want to believe in the Dr. Sebi stuff, go ahead, right? But like, it's a myth and it's crazy.
Well, and I think too, like, when you just think about basic things, if you drink a lot of water, like, your body's gonna, if you don't eat and you drink a lot of water, like, you're gonna pee all day, right? Like, if you do lollipops that make you poop, you're gonna poop. Or have diarrhea. Maybe that's a more respectful term to be able to use. But like, that's not doing anything internally to your body that your body wouldn't have done on its own. Yeah. And I think that it's fine to have conversations about quote unquote cleanses if we want to tell the truth. Like, if we want to be factual, yeah, like, let's have these conversations. Let's talk about how you spend $120 on some water. And it's not really doing anything, right? Like, let's have, honest conversations about these things, and about a lot of the marketing ploys that are used in hopes of getting people to a destination that simply does not exist. I think, yeah, let's have those conversations. But if we have those conversations, then people don't want to talk as much. So,
yeah. So I've always been somebody who believed that representation matters. But recently, this is why I like being in conversation with people. Recently, I've had conversations where people have really challenged that idea. And so I just want to ask y'all, do you think that the presence of a Lizzo in popular culture, or, a Gabrielle Sidibe, or like other fat Black women, do you feel like that has the ability to make real change? Or is that feeling, that the affirmative feelings, are those superficial? Like how important is that?
So, I mean, I think that this is probably, like, I think representation works in a particular type of way. And I think that representation with power works in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that, sometimes the way that I see representation being most effective is sometimes giving people vision that they don't have for themselves, right? So I kind of talk about in my book, growing up, how I used to watch What's Happening Now. It was in syndication, and I wasn't alive when it was originally running. And like, how I was inspired when I seen Shirley. So Shirley on What's Happening Now, like, she was the fat business owner. She had her own business, like, she had her friends and stuff. And I remember looking at that and seeing her and being like, wow, I could be like Shirley when I grow up, right? Like, but that didn't necessarily resonate and like tangible change for me, right? But it did give me a vision for my life that I didn't know existed. And then whenever you think about like representation without power, I think that's when the barrier happens. And I think that's a lot of what we see today is like when people show up and it's like, oh, you have this token individual who you're going to put on this platform for people to see. And then it's like, yeah, we have representation, but those individuals don't have power to actually do and move in ways that result in tangible change. Then it's like, well, what is the point of having representation? So I think like, you know, for maximum efficiency, like output, you need representation and power to create change. But I think that there's a value in having representation for the matters of, you know, supplying vision sometimes to people who don't have it, you know, and you inspire them to be something that maybe they didn't know that they could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess for me, like Monique would be that person just growing up, even though people have a lot of critiques about Monique, but I just remember like watching all the comedy and the Parkers. And I even, you know, had fat friends, like seeing, you know, her be friends with Andell. And like, we don't oftentimes see in films two fat Black women being friends on television at all. Right. And Insecure, it's just Kelly peeing on herself. And so there is no real deep friendship. And so I remember being in 6th grade and like creating a group. It was called Eat or Die with my fat friends. And we used to be like fat little girls walking down school. And a lot of what we thought was like, same shit Monique thought, skinny people are evil. And we would just like, you know, like we'll walk around school but what it taught us is like having fat friends is important. And so for me, like I've had fat friends since I was a little kid. Seeing Monique actually make a show like Top Model for fat girls as a little kid was so important because I'm no shade to Tyra Banks, but that show like reminded me how different my body looked. But the short-lived moments that Monique had her show on television, I was like, wow. I remember on MySpace, like it being like the cover when they were all in the nude. And so at that time, we didn't see, they were like super fat models, right? Like today, the models that are plus size are still hourglass and small frames. So I do think representation matters. And every time I talk to like a lot of different fat Black women, they talk about the way that Monique impacted their lives, just seeing her on film. Do I think it's enough? No, right? Because being fat, like being Black, being a woman is also political. And I think there's some social changes that need to happen for fat people. But I do think representation is important.
Yeah. That representation plus power formulation, Dr. Cox, that's a major key. Yeah, I'm really interested in this. You know, you mentioned something, Danny, about the kind of discrimination about different kinds of fat bodies, right? So it's like the idea, like if you're going to be fat, right? Like I see people lift up like a certain kind of hourglass shape. And I'm like, but you're not as progressive as you say, you know, like people are trying to make these statements about how much they love fat women and BBWs and all of that. But when they are uplifting fat women, it's always a certain kind of fat woman, a certain kind of shape, a certain kind of complexion. And I'm like, you still have some work to do.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, particularly within Black collectives, we repurpose diet culture to work and operate for us. And that also touches what we think about Black bodies, Black women's bodies, who we find to be attractive or not attractive, and being thick, you know, being, you know, curvy in all the right places. Like all of that is part of, it's just an extension of diet culture, right? Yeah. If I have this, you know, if my waist isn't small, then I get treated differently, right? If I'm dark skinned, I get treated differently. And that could be with an hourglass shape. It doesn't, you know, the treatment begins to change. And I think, you know, some of those things are specific to Black collectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because anytime like there's a bunch of skinny women, right? And there's this hourglass plus size model who may even be like a 16 or 18, everyone's like, yeah, we achieve body positivity. But as someone who was like in the fat Black liberation space, the activist space, many of the people who are like doing a lot of the work just don't look like that, right? They're not light skinned, they're not racially ambiguous. They're usually brown, dark skinned people, super fats. And those are the people we don't want on television. Those are the people we've been told that looks like the mammy and that are ugly and unworthy and too defiant. They don't want to achieve white bodies. And so we punish them also by not, even Black people, we don't want them in our space. We don't want them next to us, even in our films. And it just keeps showing up time and time again.
I've heard the phrase fat liberation already spoken a couple of times in this conversation. And I'm just personally wondering, what is the difference between body positivity and fat liberation?
So for me, body positivity is white women's watered down version of you should love yourself, right? And I think fat acceptance, fat liberation is just not about like, we should love fat people, because I think that's not enough. Like, and even self-love for fat people is not enough. It's about like medical discrimination. It's about the way the airlines discriminate against fat body. Every single airlines in this country, right, has an obesity policy. It's about like the fact that we experience job discrimination. And I think and that we should be able to live in our bodies without changing them. And the thing about, like, we were talking about diet culture earlier, the way that we talk about diets is that thinness is achievable for everybody. And it's not the case, right? It's also ableist. Not everybody can achieve thinness. And so fat acceptance is, to me, it's a lot of things. And it goes back to the 60s, and one of the first ever fat protest was in Central Park in New York, and they were protesting against medical discrimination. And so I embody all of those things, and I do fat acceptance work specifically for fat Black folks, but that's the difference. I don't really subscribe to body positivity because of the way that capitalism has taken over it. And it's like an all bodies matter movement. And we never get down to the root and the impact of how our society is treating fat bodies, specifically fat Black bodies.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe to add on to that, I would just say that body positivity or fat liberation is what body positivity started out as. And so fat liberation, as it is now called, used to be body positivity when fat people were leading the charge. What winded up happening is that as body positivity got some type of attention, then fat people were forced out of that movement. And it was co-opted and taken over. And now it's become this kind of blanket statement for, kind of like what Danny said, right? Loving your body no matter what, right? In any context or form. I think fat liberation is a lot more centered on fat people living in their bodies and being able to exist in peace, and to have the same access to resources that all other bodies have. And I think within that rests the context of you being able to get adequate medical care, you being able to have access to things like clothing and housing, and different things like that, right? You being able to get access to employment, and then also being comfortable in your employment. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to job interviews in different places and they don't have chairs that adequately suit fat bodies. And oftentimes what winds up happening, because fat is not a protected class, fat bodies are not a protected class. You can't ask for accommodations at your job. Nope. You can't do those things. And so most people sit and they go home with bruised thighs at the end of the day, right? We're talking about the same thing as it relates to education. You know how many students actually pay the same price for education and they can't fit in the desk? When you're
sitting in the back of the classroom,
right? And even if they're sitting in the back of the classrooms, right? We have maybe 4 or 5 of those desks that situate for people who usually they're reserved for people who have disabilities, but like you can access the room. And so I think, when we start talking about fat liberation, it is, it's very much social justice oriented, as opposed to body positivity kind of being this feel good. I don't even know what you want to call it at this point. But this feel good comprehensive, everybody's welcome no matter what, but there's still this sense of like discrimination and pushing out, even when fat bodies attempt to enter into body positive spaces, which is really interesting, right? Like there's still these barriers that happen that's like, yeah, okay, it's okay to be where you are, but make sure you're healthy, right? That's always kind of the chime that winds up happening. And so those are kind of the differences, right? We're talking about actually making changes structurally and interpersonally in the way that people are being treated, and, you know, kind of this other personal workshopping that you do with yourself to give yourself extra hugs before you go to sleep at night type stuff.
And I also feel like body positivity spends a lot of time focused on desirability, right? Like this is about fat people not being desired. Like, okay, if you desire me, as Joy said, like, am I going to have a chair that fits me? I went to, my birthday was last week and I was in St. Augustine. There was only one chair, social distancing, so it was only one chair like left that I can sit in, and it was at the bar. And y'all know Florida is open, so it was at the bar, and I was like, I can't sit here. I couldn't fit. That Friday later, I had dinner with my mom, and we couldn't eat outside because there wasn't a seat that could fit me, my mom and I. My mom is a super fat, right? And so we have to think about, like, it's not about desire, but none of those situations about neither one of us being desired, right? It was about like what we have access to. And so I think it's people try to cover up, right, fat phobia by only talking about desirability. Like, I like fat people. I watch fat people on porn, and I think fat people are beautiful. It's not enough. Like, do you want me to be able to sit next to you on an airplane? That's a deeper question, right? Like, do you want me to be safe? Are you advocating for seatbelts that accommodate me, right? Are you advocating for birth control, right? That Plan B pills that go up over 175 pounds, right? To accommodate people like me. I weigh over 200 pounds. So Plan B does not accommodate me. What about my reproductive health, right? Like, those are the things that are just, I think that body positivity does not address, because they don't have to, because it's centered around white bodies and thin bodies and people who have the privilege to be close to those things, even if they are people of color.
Let's talk about the concern trolling regarding health when we try to discuss fat phobia. So I have found that people really struggle with even beginning to conceptualize that weight and health might not be linked in the ways that we've been taught all of these years. Whenever I try to bring this up on the For Harriet platform, everybody gets their fake MD out. All of a sudden, everybody was Google it, people quoting the American Medical Association, Google it like hard. And I'm like, why? Why are you so invested in this, right? When there is a growing body of research by like actual medical doctors and actual scholars and actual scientists saying that this is not coupled in the way that you think it is. Why are people having such a hard time with that?
I mean, I think that we've been indoctrinated with this doctrine for decades. You know, it's like me showing up to a Christian retreat and telling people that Jesus is not real, right? They are going to kick, they are going to scream, and they are not going to care what I have to say, regardless of what type of evidence that I have. I can tell you, like, oh, I went here, the tomb does not exist, right? Like, I can bring out all of those things and they will say you are wrong. You like, this is not actual, this isn't factual. How are you going to tell me, right? This is what's been published here. I've been hearing this all my life. And I think that indoctrination is doing its job. And it takes a lot to break people away from that. And it's not just people in smaller body, it's people who are in larger bodies too, right? You know, I, in the past, have duked it out, quote unquote, with other fat people, right? What does it mean? Oh, but you want to make sure as long as you're healthy is fine. You know, there's fat people who don't believe that they are healthy, or that they can be healthy in the bodies that they currently have. And I think a lot of that just comes from the indoctrination that we receive in society. I mean, as young as 3 years old, kids are learning about weight stigma. We see it in cartoons, the type of people, the type of characters that get cast as it relates to fat bodies. They are undesirable. They are never looked at in, like, you know, and good light. And then we hear it constantly over and over and over again. And I also want to say that like the weight loss industry is a $60 billion industry. I think it's $70 billion now.
$72 billion.
There's a lot of money that's invested in people hating themselves. There's a lot of money being invested in that. There's a lot of money being invested in telling people that their bodies aren't good enough the way that they are. And the medical industry is not exempt from that. They make their money. I work at a medical school. And so I talk to doctors, and doctors tell me how the admin tells them, you know, whenever you go in for your visits with people, ask them about their weight. Because if you can write on your chart that you've counseled somebody about their weight, then they get more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's everywhere. And we've been taught to hate fat, you know, the existence of it. And, you know, you don't leave that at home whenever you go to work. Like, you take that with you and then you practice it. And I mean, I think that, you know, if anything, it's just the indication that whatever it is that we've been indoctrinated with is working. When you believe something is factual, you fight for it. And that's what people are doing. And they're not willing to listen or hear other things.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a joke when you said the people in your comment section turn into MDs. It's interesting because I'm like, why so many criminal justice students think they're doctors? It's just the craziest thing ever. And I say that as somebody who went to school for sociology. Like, it's just weird. People are always telling me about my health, but I think it's racism at the end of the day. Like, this isn't just about fat phobia. This is also about racism, right? And like the war on Black bodies. And that's why I feel like a lot of Black people like hold on to that. A lot of the who eats bad, right, messages, soul food is bad for you, that, you know, it's just like racism telling us that we can't eat the food that our grandmas and grandpas have eaten for a very long time. But sometimes I like to tell people something that Fannie Lou Hamer said, right? Like, all fat people aren't well fed. And I think it's important that people keep that in their minds, right? And so like, as a fat person, right, like, you're so worried about my health, but you're not worried about me having access to food, right? Like, if I live in a food desert or not, right? Like, if doctors, right, like if I have an ailment, right, I've gone to a Black doctor with the ailment, and not an ailment, I fell off my bike, I hurt my leg, and what I was given was weight loss pills, right? Do you care about my health, or do you only care about me getting smaller? And that's like a real thing. So it's not about health. My mental health, if I go to a therapist and I talk about how I feel about my body, they're going to say I need to lose weight. I'm less likely to be seen as someone with the eating disorders, right? Like bulimia and anorexia is something we attach to thin bodies, not something that fat people have, right? Even body dysmorphia. Who is allowed to talk about body dysmorphia, right? And like, who do we attach to body dysmorphia? It's, you know, thinner bodies, right? Like, we don't oftentimes like give fat people that room. And so I think it's just a lot of it has a lot to do with the marketing. A lot of the shows, as Joy was talking about, has put fat people next to meals. Like, how many movies have you seen fat people eating a burger or talking about food? And so this is what we think about fat people. They achieve this by eating ice cream and McDonald's, even though we've been here long before McDonald's. And we've been here before your Jesus, you know, like, I love Jesus. Well, we've been here before Jesus. And so, and so I think that white supremacy has done a really good job of making Black people, or just people in general, believe in this system. And the reason why I keep talking about Black people, because I'm like, fat issues and Black issues when it comes to health are so connected, right? And like, there is a war on our bodies. And if anytime I hear people, you know, I don't really interact with that many white people. I work at an all Black job, right? I have all Black friends. And so I don't really interact with white people a lot. And so anytime I hear my Black friends, like, you know, agreeing with the medicine, I'm like, they want you dead too, right? As much as they want me dead. So don't invest in their medicine. Like, it's crazy.
You brought up something that's really important here. The link between Fat Phobia and Anti-blackness. There's an amazing book on this called Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. And I just feel like people are refusing to see it. The way that we talk about fat people as being undisciplined, as being lazy, maps directly onto the ways that we historically talk about Black people as being undisciplined and being lazy and being moochers and all that. But people just don't want to believe that that link exists.
It's interesting.
Sure. I mean,
oh, go ahead, Joy.
I was going to say, sure. I think that is like, I think that is this country's MO, right? Like, I don't see. We talk about racism. They wrote the rules. They wrote the script. They know all of that stuff. You ask them about it now. I don't see. I don't get it. I don't understand. Can you explain it to me? Can I walk you through the steps that you created? That's what you want me to do. Right. And so I think there's a lot of like deny. And I say this, like, white supremacy is a double-edged sword, right? It's cutting white people. It's cutting Black people more, but it's cutting white people as you pull that knife back out. And so white people have been victims to their own indoctrination. Like, you have other generations that are now coming up believing the lies that their parents told them. And it's hard to break them free from that, you know what I mean, from that nonsense. I mean, I think Sabrina String's book lays out some things in such plain language and so easily that you could like pick it up and run with it. But there will be this sense of blindness. Nobody sees, nobody can read anymore, nobody can comprehend, right? Like, it just doesn't work. But what we see is that what we know as diet culture now did start with Black people, right? As a way of talking about us, like racism alive and well. And then we've watched it expand over time, right? Because now you can other a larger group of individuals, and you don't just have to limit it to race, right? It expands in a way that still, those barriers still exist, right? You can still stop people from getting the needs that they need, and you can blame it on them. That's what stigma does, right? Mm-hmm. Stigma turns it into a personal issue, a personal problem. But yeah, racism at the roots of it, 112%. But, to get people to actually believe it and buy into it is the same reason why we keep having all these workshops about implicit bias and wondering why no one's learning. You got to want it. It has to be in your heart. It has to be something that you're committed to. And I don't think that people in this country are ready to do that yet. And so until that happens, yeah, there's going to be 3 blind mice and nobody can read or see or think for themselves.
Yeah, it's one thing that she talks about in the book about, like, before, fatness, white people have been fat too, right? Like, for a long time. And it wasn't until, we attach it to Black bodies, like white people did that. And then now being fat is bad, but white people loved fat white bodies before, right? They love those bodies. And so that's why, to me, it's just racism. It is what it is, right? Like, that's why I really only center fat Black people in my work. And I'm not really worried. What's the lady named Peppermint Patty? She knew she was white. Wasn't that Patty O'Patty? Who was she? Well, y'all know who I'm talking about, the white lady who called the police on the fat lady.
Oh, you said Peppermint Patty. I was thinking Charlie Brown.
I can't remember what her little fake name was, but I know who you're talking about.
Okay, the fat white lady at the barbecue who called the police. I'm like, fat white people do not forget that they are white, right? And like, that's why it's important for fat Black people, and just like Black people in general, to be aligned on fighting fat phobia, because doing the work with like white people, they are always going to prioritize whiteness no matter what.
You know something I've been thinking about? I've been thinking about how COVID has exacerbated the already rampant fat phobia that exists in our society. I think that the emphasis on comorbidities and including obesity in that, I just feel like that gives people another excuse to concern troll regarding health. Have you seen that or felt that at all?
Yeah, I think when the headlines first came out, and I don't know, Danny, if you want to answer first, I'll let you go.
No, because I have a different thing, and actually I won't answer because I'm actually don't feel that way. So go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, if you don't feel that way, then challenge. Like, I am that. Yes, please. Okay, but Dr. Cox, continue.
So when the headlines first came out, there was a lot of talk about comorbidities. There was a lot of talk about obesity being a risk factor for individuals. And Christy Harrison was one of the people who kind of started to kind of look at the numbers as it related to this. And what we found was that there wasn't a significant difference between people who they identified as obese, like more likely to get COVID, because that was the issue. The issue was more around who's more likely to be susceptible to COVID, and they used quote unquote obesity as a risk factor. And so I think that a lot of things have turned up because of that. Like you're at greater risk to have it. I will say that if you do get it and you live in a fat body, you probably are at greater risk. If you go into a hospital, you're probably less likely to get quality care once you have it. We know that because fat people are already mistreated in the medical industry as it relates to that. And we know that, doctors are given the power to make decisions to decide whether or not you should qualify, right? I think there was a news source that came out not too long ago about it was a man who was disabled, and they decided either he was on a ventilator or they took him off a ventilator, and they didn't fight for him because he had disabilities, right? But he also had COVID. And so I think that there is a lot of talk around those things. And I think that, this whole COVID-15 thing that kind of stirred up after people were home for the first couple of weeks, that is an issue too that's kind of spilled over, right? So people are watching their bodies change, and some people are panicking, and what does that look like for them? And then fat phobia just oozes out of people's pores as a result, right? Like nobody wants to be fat. Fat is like the worst thing in the world for a lot of people. And there's been research that's been done around that would say like people would rather lose a limb than be fat. They'd rather go through a divorce than be fat. And so it doesn't surprise me that stuff happens. But what we do know is like what we know with everything else as it relates to research and fatness, right? Is that the closest thing that research has ever been able to find as it relates to people who are in larger bodies is that there are correlations, right? Meaning that there are relationships, spurious relationships between somebody who has a larger body and other diseases. To date, there has not been a disease that says, oh, this was caused solely by somebody being fat. Mm-hmm. So we got to stop that, right? Like the messaging around, how we talk about disease, how we talk about health again, all of those medical conditions, things like that, because it only perpetuates this, it only perpetuates fat phobia. And so in my space, I have seen those issues around fatness and COVID, but I've also seen a lot of that being debunked as well, which makes me happy.
Yeah. Okay, Danny, you said you don't agree, and I love a challenging thought. So.
Well, I guess I'm just I was having a different approach. I guess I wanted to say that like I don't feel like fat phobia has heightened is what I was getting at, right? Like I think people were already fat phobic. Like I think that we were seeing this in the media all the time. I think we're just in the house and everyone is like stopping and looking at it. I don't think fat phobia ever went on a decline or stayed neutral. Like it has always been here, always been around us, right? This is not a new phenomenon because COVID is here and people are gaining weight. People have always been afraid to gain weight, right? And like people have, like I've been around, January is coming, right? We know every time January comes, someone is going to ask you to join a diet. Your job may, do some weight loss challenge, which is very problematic. And there's no protection for fat people at work to stop that, right? Like all of these different things. So to me, it's really not heightened, right? I think people feel the exact same way they did in 2019 and 2018 about fatness and fat bodies, that you are going to die from something, if not COVID, something, high blood pressure, right? Cancer, whatever it is, you're going to die because you're fat. And so I don't really see a difference. I see the same people having the same politics about fat bodies.
Yeah, that's legit. Yeah, I think that's useful. I have lots of thoughts about our representations of sexual liberation and women's sexuality in particular. And I don't love that sexual liberation is always imaged a certain way or imagined a certain way. It's certain kinds of poses, certain kinds of garments. And I have often critiqued how we are, as women, coerced into adopting these kind of postures if we want to be deemed desirable. But I've gotten some pushback on those ideas. And I recognize that for some people whose bodies that have been deemed as deviant or outside of the realm of desirability, that participating in those kinds of sexual performances, that they could feel liberated in that or empowered in that, right? So I guess my question here is a dark-skinned, fat Black woman showing her body, being overtly sexual, is that inherently transgressive?
Well, as someone who is dark skinned, fat, Black, and showing her body. Sorry, that was funny. Okay. Well, I think it's definitely empowering, right? Like I think that it is defiant, and it's intended to be defiant sometimes, right? Like sometimes I'm posting and I'm also being defiant. I probably got a message the day before, was like, you should die, or like your body is gross. I mean, you're on the internet, Kimberly, so people send you the most craziest shit ever, right? Sometimes I am being defiant, but also sometimes I'm trying to be in community with people who are uncomfortable with their bodies because of all of these different ideas about what their bodies are. And for me, like, it's assumed that this is about men, right? But over 80% of my followers are women. They're not men. I purposely don't allow men to follow me. I unfollow men, right? And so I've had people who have bought lingerie for the first time and they're wearing it for themselves. And I think that different images are important. Like most of the images that we see about fat Black bodies, they're covered up. I'll go back to talking about Insecure, right? When you see Kelly positioned next to Issa and Molly, they may have their shoulders out, and Kelly got on a blazer, right, or a kimono, and it's hot as hell outside, right? And so, many times when we've seen fat Black people on television, a lot of it has been through Tyler Perry. And what do the fat Black people look like and how they dress? Like, who is that sex symbol, right? We're allowed to have variety in smaller bodies, right? But when it comes to fat bodies, we get uncomfortable and everybody's gone with the wind triggers start happening and everybody want us to be their mammy, right? And truthfully, a lot of people have not dealt with the way that they see mammy, and that's why they are projecting it onto me, and so, or people who look like me. And I do think it's liberating. I do think it's important. Do I think all of it is, has the same meaning and message? No, but I also stand by people should be able to express that. And just for you, I think Leah Vernon, right? I don't know if you know her. She's this fat Black Muslim influencer / model, and I think she's very sexually liberated, right? Like, I think that sexual liberation doesn't have to look like me in Savage Fenty, right, with my fupa out. I think it's also in the way that I wear some of Leah Vernon. I've worn Leah Vernon's pieces and I felt very sexy and very liberated. I didn't feel confined to dark browns and blues, and I was also covered up. And so I think both feelings can come from, that feeling can come from both types of outfits.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I'm not dark skinned, but I'm fat now, and I'm a woman, and I would say I'm probably more on the conservative side. Like, I believe like my sexiness lies in like the aura whenever I walk in a room, things of that nature. And so you may not see me online with all my body out. But I think like I think some of this is really about who's writing the narrative, right? Like, who are you doing this for? If you're doing it for you, like, it's going to look different on everybody, right? Like, I wouldn't critique Danny's stuff, like, because that's her stuff, right? Like, I can't say like, oh, she shouldn't be doing it this way. It may, like, if I see somebody's stuff and it may not work for me, then it don't work for me. I got to learn how to own that. And I think that, living in this day and age, even in social media, I think that that's important because we do a lot of narrative writing over original narratives of individuals, right? So I look at your stuff and then I say what you meant. I look at your stuff and then I say what you thought when you said, when you did, right? Instead of just saying, hey, this is how I think things went, or this is how I think things, things go. And so, I think part of this too is also giving that sense of space to individuals and saying, let them, kind of let them express themselves the best way that they see fit, right? And not speak on behalf of everybody else. And if you really are that interested, then ask them a question. And if they answer, then you take it as facts and you keep it moving. But it doesn't mean that you have to do it. It doesn't necessarily even mean that you have to accept it. But I think we also have to be careful about making sure that we're not overriding on people's stories because of how their stories sit with us. I think that becomes a bit problematic.
And I just want to say one more thing to that, especially when it comes to fat bodies, people have to think on another level that this is the first time fat Black people have had, or fat people have had access to some type of these clothes, right? Like, even though we want to tear down the walls of like fast fashion and Fashion Nova, even though I don't wear Fashion Nova, a lot of the things that a lot of these brands sell, it's our first time having access to crop tops in the past 5 years, right? And like, while everybody else had crop tops, we still were tying it up and putting a knot with, with a rubber band around it to keep it up. Like that was the thing that people were doing in the 90s. Fat people did it up until the 2000s. They didn't have any other options, right? Shorts, being that we wanted to wear short shorts, even lingerie, having access to different types of lingerie and not just, a cover up body, one piece lingerie. And so a lot of this is also a privilege to, you've had it for a while, so you're not even thinking about, has other bodies even had access to these types of clothing? And so we want to show other people, now that it's here, you can wear it too.
Yeah. I have feelings about this. Okay, so I'm taking it in. I see exactly what you are saying. I guess my feeling about it, though, is we are all making choices within like the confines of what's been presented to us, And so I understand, I don't want to strip people of their agency. Like, we do shit that makes us feel good. I do a lot of shit that is not liberatory, and I like a lot of problematic shit. I wonder though, like, are we minimizing the influence of the structure, the structural pressure, right? Like, we don't want to overwrite people's narratives. We want to give people the room to make their own decisions all the time. But there is all of this other messaging and socialization happening that pushes us towards certain stuff. And I always wonder, are we discounting that?
I mean, I think some people may. I mean, I don't think that there's a blanket answer for everyone. Yeah. Right? Like we can sit here and we can kind of like go through the trenches. I think some people may, right? And this kind of reminds me back to like the issue we talked about earlier with Lizzo, right? People just saying like, leave her alone. Stop messing with Lizzo. It's like, no, well, wait a minute. You can hold two realities simultaneously. We can talk about your liberation, but we can also talk about how you're operating within the confines of this structural institution and what is being deemed as sexy and why you feel like you need to have access to those things in the first place. And I think some people think about that and they make decisions based on that. And then I think there are other people who do not. And they're like, I'm just happy to have like the crop top, right? Like, I'm just happy to have, I'm happy that thongs come in my size. Look at my butt cheeks. Like, that happens. Like, that's a thing, right? And maybe because I'm part of the community and I'm biased, right? There's a piece of me that says, okay, but we also learn how to give people grace. I'm trying to allow people to evolve in their own way and find their own answers. Because where I was 5 years ago, I'm not there now, right? And so maybe 5 years ago, I was like, look at my butt cheeks. And now 5 years later, I'm like, no, I'm not, butt cheeks are only for X, Y, and Z. I don't need to be all over the internet with my butt cheeks. So I think there's like, there's space. Everybody's kind of coming into this, finding liberation, finding fat acceptance. I think particularly for fat Black bodies, you're finding it in different ways. You're coming upon a community probably that you've never been exposed to a day in your life, right? And you're trying to manage all of that. You're trying to find out how this makes sense for you. How is this going to work for you? And some of that is experimental. And some of that got to feel right for you. Like, even if people are telling it, even if people are telling you it, it's still it has to hit you here, right? Before you're willing to actually practice it. So I'm sure there are people who have heard this message and was like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I like these little lace bitties, right? So this is what I want right now, right? And until that thing kind of, soaks in and seeps in, and it's something that they can live by and stay true to, you probably won't see that change. And so, I think that's also important too. Like, we're not all at the same place. We're not all getting the same lessons, and we're all trying to manage our lives in a way that we honor our politics, and that in a way that we honor, who we see ourselves as individuals. And it's going to present in a whole host of different ways.
Yeah. And I want to say something from a fashion perspective. I will say that even like now that fat people are getting access to these things, and I want to say even some fat people, because many of these brands don't go past like a 3X, right? And we know that people are bigger. I'm a 3X, right? And so we know that people are larger than me. But I do think that like now all of the clothes are turning sexy, right? And then you don't have access to other things. But I think that there does needs to be a mixture, because even though I like to wear crop tops, this is my personal thing, right? Like, I don't want to wear crop tops to a community function. I'm not saying that other people can't, but I don't wear booty cut shorts to community functions. However, I do wear those shorts. Like right now, I got a split up to the side of my hip, but like I want to have both. And I think that when we have these conversations and we're just talking about like sexuality and like expression, I think it's also important to remember that like fat people's sexuality was like just one thing, right? Just a couple years ago that we saw. And like, while everybody is like, we're on a sexual liberation movement, we're like, there's a lot of things happening and before our eyes with fat bodies. Like for me, I don't boycott with, Black people with brands, like, brands that have been racist, because I don't have access to clothes in the same way that other thin bodies may have. I feel it in my heart, right? I think that company is racist, but I may still have to shop there because they're the only place that's open in the mall that I can go grab clothes from my size. So I think when it comes to fashion and fat bodies, it's complex and it's just not one thing.
Well, that's all I have. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you so much, Dr. Cox. Thank you so much, Danny. Can you just tell people where they might be able to find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me at Alma Pound Cake on all platforms. That's AMA Pound Cake on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and even on Clubhouse, which is ghetto.
Yeah, so I'm not on social media maybe as much as I should be, but you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under Fresh Out the Cocoon. It's all one word. And then drjoycox.com is my website.
Right. And plug your book last time.
Oh, and my book is entitled Fat Girls and Black Bodies, Creating Communities of Our Own. You can find the link. Oh, look, see, Danny has it. You can find the link on my website, and preferably get it from an independent bookstore if you can.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. You guys, it's hard for me to sit down and make videos these days. It just is. But every time I sit down and do this, I realize how much I like it, how much I missed it, how I'm like kind of a little bit good at it. So I'm going to be back here. I'm going to be much more consistent in 2021 for a variety of reasons, one of which I can't even talk about yet, but I'm going to be here. I appreciate that you're still here. So I'm going to show up for you and for me. But you know where I've been. Okay, if I'm not on here making videos, I'm on Patreon, making videos, recording podcasts, talking to the people, telling all my business. Really telling all my business. Okay, that is where I am. Shout out to the patrons, shout out to the members, shout out to the Discord, which is like another little fun secret place where we talk about things. I appreciate y'all so much. Honestly, the patrons and the members keep the wheels on this thing. That's why I haven't completely fallen off. So I appreciate that enormously. But you know what I have done since I was last on here? So I decided last year that every year I'm going to do basically a year in review where I talk about all the money that I've made, where I talk about the social media strategy of For Harriet and the content strategy of For Harriet, and how I just navigate being an influencer slash business owner, because people have lots of questions about that and how I do it and how I structure things and organize things. That I got a lot of questions recently about retirement because, you know, I'm in my 30s. I'm not as young as I used to be. I do have to think about what my financial future is going to be like. And I've gotten really serious about that this year. So I did that in a webinar. I answered all of those questions. It's called How the Hell Are You Doing This? I will put the link down below. And then if you even want to go deeper and want to know how I create videos, how I script them out, how I film them, you can also look at the how I make money and make videos Q&A from last year. Like that's like the intro. That's the intro webinar. So again, links to both of those videos are going to be down below. I appreciate everybody who attended while I was telling all of my business. I don't really care. You know, I do think it's important to be as transparent as possible about the money stuff. I feel like this life is a really non-traditional life, and it really is not going to work if you don't have everything in order. So it's taken me a lot to get everything in order, and I feel like it kind of is right now, but it's definitely getting there. So I talked about that over there. It's kind of a miracle, but it's actually really well executed strategy, like just to be honest. So that's that. You guys, how have you been? We're still in a pandemic. Vaccine is here. Vaccine is here. I mean, it's not really here for most of us. I am going to get the vaccine as soon as it's widely available. I'm not going to argue about it. Don't get it if you don't want to get it. Kimberly is getting the vaccine, and Kimberly is going to be out. Okay, I'm going to be out in the world next year. I don't know about you, but that's it. Stay safe. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.